Hello, I'm Dan Tricarico, and I wrote a book called The Zen Teacher Creating Focus, Simplicity, and Tranquility in the Classroom. And that led to the book that your teacher was kind enough to get you called Sanctuaries, Self-Care Secrets for Stressed Out Teachers. So first of all, I want to thank Principal Hall for asking me to be here today. And I want to give a special shout out to my good friend, Teresa Holleran, who has just been an amazing support, great encouragement, and a good friend to me as I've been spreading this message and talking to teachers all over. So thank you, Teresa, and thank you, Principal Hall, for making this happen today. Let me tell you a little bit about how I got here. I was heading toward burnout about 5 years ago, and I just saw a lot of great teachers burning out in the profession, and just some of the greatest teachers I've ever seen. And I just thought, well, I can't do that. So I started a blog called The Zen Teacher, and then it led to the book. And then I'm fortunate enough that the Sanctuaries book just came out. And so I have the privilege and the honor of going around and helping teachers reduce their stress and improve their self-care. And that's what I've been asked to do here. So let's get started. I just had some basic tips and strategies that I wanted to share with you. Most of these are in the Sanctuaries book. So what I'm hoping is that when you read the book, you'll say, oh, I remember when he talked about that. And then, in this video, it will be familiar to you. So the first concept I want to talk about is what I call intentional and radical self-care. Radical self-care, I kind of stole from a really favorite writer of mine, Anne Lamott, which some of you may have heard of. She's a phenomenal writer. She writes about self-care. She writes about faith. She writes about hope. And she talks about radical self-care. But I added the word intentional to it, and I'll tell you why. Let me break those words down for you. Intentional means on purpose. We make a choice that we're going to take care of ourselves. Nobody's really going to come up to you, and say, you know what, you look kind of tired. Maybe you could use a nap. That's really just not going to happen. So it's really up to us to take care of ourselves. So that's the intentional part of it. The radical part of it that Anne Lamott talks about means in our 21st century go, go, go society, taking care of ourselves is not valued. It's not something that we do in our culture. So it's a very radical and subversive idea. You're going to ruffle feathers. You're going to get funny looks, right? When you stop and take care of yourself. And people are going to be looking at you like, why does he get to take care of himself when I have to go, go, go and never stop? And what they fail to see is that it's a choice, and it's one that we have to make ourselves. So I'm going to ask you, as you read through the book and as you consider your own self-care plan, to think about the benefits of intentional and radical self-care. Intentional by choice, and radical meaning understand that, not everybody's going to understand what you're doing, and you're going to get some funny looks, and you're going to ruffle some feathers. So the second idea is the idea of permission. Meaning, one of the reasons I see that people don't take care of themselves and don't have a self-care plan is because they haven't given themselves permission. It's really important that you understand that you are in charge of you. There's nobody else who can give you that permission other than you. You may have a great support system. You may have a lovely spouse or significant other, and they may be fully supportive, but they're not in your head. They're not in your body. They don't know 100% what you need. They only know what they think you need, but you know what you need, and you need to give yourself permission to take care of yourselves. Now, as educators, you understand the importance of a permission slip. And in Sanctuaries, there is actually a certificate that you could print out or copy, where you write your own permission slip to give yourself time for self-care. Because, if you're going to take a class on a field trip, you have to have permission slips. Why? It gives it gravity, it makes it real, and it's a binding contract, right? And it's saying that you're allowed to do it. So if you write a hard copy permission slip for yourself, that gives you permission and makes it real and takes it out of your head and puts it on paper so that you know that you can do it. But you have to be specific is the thing. Maybe your permission slip says something like, I give myself permission to read for pleasure on Friday nights from 8 to 8:30. Maybe that's your permission slip. Maybe your permission slip is a mani-pedi. Maybe your permission slip is to sit in silence for 10 minutes. Whatever it is, if you write it down, it takes it out of your head and gets it on paper and makes it real. So permission slips and giving yourself permission, super important. The third tip I want to share is something I call the 5 S's, and they are stillness, silence, subtraction, space, and slowing down. I don't have time in a short video to go over all of them, so I wanted to touch on the 2 that I feel are very important simply because our culture doesn't value them. That is silence and stillness. We are not used to silence. I don't know why this is, but every restaurant I go in anymore has TVs all over the wall. For some reason, they think when I go in and I want to have dinner, I want to watch TV every restaurant I go into. I don't know why. But how rare is it for us to find any time in our lives where things are just silent, where there just is nothing going on and it's quiet and you don't hear anything? Very, very rare. Just so it's important that you can find some time in your day just to be silent. It could be at recess when the kids are out. It could be right after class. It could be in the car on the way home. By the way, I'm a big proponent. I love music, as those of you who know me, and Teresa knows this, that I love classic rock. But sometimes in the car on the way home, I'll just turn it off and sit in silence, because that's 20 minutes where I don't have to hear the white noise of the world. And that silence just focuses me, and I breathe and I feel that stress just flowing out of my body. So look for moments where you can find silence. Stillness is the same thing. We're a go, go, go society, and we're never just still. I start every class period with my freshmen, my 9th graders, with 10 minutes of independent silent reading. And my goal was to improve their reading skills, of course. But when I surveyed them, and you would think that the Zen teacher would know this, what I was surprised to find out is that they really appreciated the time to be quiet, that silence again, and still. They don't have time. There's no place in their life where that happens. So if you can provide that for yourself and or your students, it really makes a difference in the stress reduction, because it's not something that we do in our society. So silence and stillness. And as I said, there are 5, but those are the 2 I wanted to cover in this video. One of my favorite stress reduction techniques is the idea of what I call pamper triggers. And where I got this from is a couple of years ago, it was kind of a buzzword to be triggered, right? And I'm not making fun of it, but it meant to, like, in some way, something happened that reminded you of a previous trauma, and it made you feel uncomfortable, or there was emotional pain or something like that. And I thought, that's really sad and that's really unfortunate, but I want to hijack that word and turn it into something positive. So I started asking myself, what are my pamper triggers? What are the triggers that make me feel soothed and taken care of and comfortable and pampered? And for me, and everybody's different, but for me, it's slippers. I love slippers because I feel so swaddled and comfortable. And maybe a big fluffy robe, that's kind of a pamper trigger. I have great memories of growing up with my family eating hot popcorn at night while watching TV. So hot buttered popcorn is a pamper trigger of mine. So the question for you to think about is, what are your pamper triggers? And then, of course, how can I spend more time with them? And incorporating those into your life so that they become a part of your life instead of just something I try to get to and I don't get to very often. So figuring out what your pamper triggers are and how to spend more time there is a really good idea. And finally, the thought I want to leave you with is, and it comes from, I'm of a certain age, and some of you may remember this, that Nancy Reagan, the First Lady, had an anti-drug slogan, just say no. And when you think of it, in these days, our busyness and our cell phones and our devices and our Netflix binging, this is our addiction. This is our drug of choice in 2019. And we need to learn to say no when we can. Now, as a teacher, I understand that's super hard, because as teachers, we're givers, right? We always want to be giving. And that's a lovely, noble pursuit. But if, you've all heard that expression, you can't pour from an empty cup. And that's so true. And I say teachers are such givers that not only will they pour from an empty cup, that if a student or a family member needs the cup, they'll give over the cup too. And my job is to help you get back at least the cup and hopefully fill it up with a little bit of self-care. But if you say no, it doesn't make you a bad person. And I know that when you're a beginning teacher, especially, you're expected to do everything. You want to show everybody you're a team player, and you might have to go through that period as we all did. And I know when I started out, the same year, I like directed the school play, and I wrote for the staff newsletter, and I even coached the faculty senior student basketball game. And I don't have an athletic bone in my body, I promise you, but I wanted to show them that I was up for it and that I can do it. Fortunately, I was young and single and I had a lot of time and a lot of energy, but you get to a point where you say, my levels are as high as they're going to get and I can't do anymore. And then you need the power of no. Again, Anne Lamott says, no is a complete sentence. You don't need to qualify. You don't need to have any rationale. You don't need to explain. Just say, no, thank you. That's not something I can take on right now. So if you incorporate some of those ideas in your life, if you understand what intentional and radical self-care is, if you give yourself permission and write some permission slips for specific types of self-care that you haven't been getting to, you focus on some silence and some stillness, you identify and spend some time with your pamper triggers, and you learn to say no to a couple things, I think you're going to be on your way to some reduced stress and some improved self-care. So I just want to remind you that the book is Sanctuaries, Self-Care Secrets for Stressed Out Teachers. And I also have the Zen Teacher, which is, where is it? Creating Focus, Simplicity, and Tranquility in the Classroom. If you have any questions, I'm always available. You can find me on Twitter at the Zen Teacher. I have a Facebook page called the Zen Teacher. There's a Facebook group called the Zen Teacher Facebook group. I'm even on Instagram. I'm experimenting with that, which is at Zen Teacher, no the in that case, just Zen Teacher. My email is teachingzen@gmail.com. Are you seeing a theme here? But you can reach out to me at any of those places if you have any questions about this video or any thing that you read in the book. And please, 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 let me know what you think about the book and the concepts in there, even if you hate it. Oh, and one other thing is apparently on Amazon, it's super important to have reviews. So if anybody would be willing to write an honest review, you don't have to love it, just tell me what you thought or tell Amazon what you thought. That would be super helpful to me. And if I can do anything else, just let me know. So thank you for listening to those ideas. And I want you to know that whatever you're doing, you're okay the way you are. Thank you for all that you do for your students. And take care of yourself because we need you. Take care. We'll talk soon. Bye-bye.